Hello and welcome to today's episode. Today's episode deals with the concept and the meaning of communication. It will also talk about the importance and the process of communication. In addition, the script also explains the various channels and communication networks that exist. This episode will also throw some light on the barriers to effective communication and the guidelines for effective communication. I'm Amrita Ghoshkumar, and the subject expert for today is Dr. Tarannum Amir, teaching in Satyavati College, University of Delhi. Today, we will take a broad overview of the concept of communication. Communication is one of the most important elements in an organization. In order to exchange views, opinions, as well as ideas between two or more persons, communication is required. The term communication has been derived from the Latin word communis, which means common. Thus, whenever two or more persons come together for the purpose of communicating with each other, it is essential that they must have some common ground of understanding. Continuous interaction between people is necessary for better understanding as well as for a business organization to survive. It has been rightly said that communication is necessary for human relationship. Human beings not only interact with one another but also understand each other through the process of communication. We spend most of the time of a day in communicating with each other. Communication may be defined as a process of exchange of ideas, views, facts, opinions, or emotions to create a mutual understanding. The term communication not only includes the spoken or written words, but it is more than that. It also includes gestures, attitudes, feelings, or actions. According to James I. Gibson and others, communication has been defined as the transmission of information and understanding through the use of common symbols. Common symbols may be verbal or non-verbal. In the words of Coons and O'Donnell, communication is an intercourse by words, letters, symbols, or messages, and is a way that one organization member shares meaning and understanding with another. According to Hudson, communication in its simplest form is conveying of information from one person to another. In the words of Allen, communication is the sum of all the things one person does when he wants to create understanding in the minds of another. It is a bridge of meaning. It involves systematic and continuous process of telling, listening, and understanding. In short, we can say that communication is nothing but the process of passing of information, views, opinions, and so on from one person to another, which helps in understanding each other. The main features of communication are discussed here. A. Communication is a continuous process. B. It is pervasive in nature. This means that it is required in all fields. C. Communication involves two or more persons, that is a sender and a receiver or receivers. D. It is a two-way process. This means that communication will not be completed unless and until the receiver also gives the feedback to the sender. E. Communication is not only the transfer of ideas or views to the other person, but also involves correct interpretation as well as understanding of the views communicated. F. The main purpose of communication is to make the other person understandable. There are various purposes of communication, but the main purpose of communication is to create a mutual understanding between two or more persons. Another purpose of communication is to make healthy human relationships. According to Glore, the main objectives of communication are as follows. 1. To keep employees informed of the company's progress. 2. To provide orders and instructions to the employees. 3rd, to develop the will to work among employees. 4th, to obtain feedback from the employees. 5th, to develop an interest of the management in the employees. 6th, to prevent or reduce labor turnover. 7th, to create an interest among the employees with respect to their jobs. Various elements in the process of communication are as follows. A. The sender. The first and foremost element in the process of communication is the sender. The sender is the person who initiates the process of communication. He has certain ideas, certain views, information, etc. which he wants to send to the other person. B. The message. The next element in the process of communication is the message. The message is the information, the views, the ideas and so on which the sender wants to share with the other person. C. Encoding. The term encoding refers to the words, symbol, gestures and so on through which the sender organizes his ideas, views and so on and communicates the same to the receiver. In simple words, encoding is the language which is used by the sender to transmit the message. D. Channel. The next important element is the channel or the medium through which the message will be transmitted from the sender to the receiver. There are different channels or media through which a message can be transmitted. Most commonly used channels are the telephone, the letter, face-to-face conversations and so on. E. Receiver. The receiver is the person who receives the message or a person for whom the message is to be delivered. The communication process will not be completed unless and until the message is received by the receiver. F. Decoding. The term decoding refers to the words into which a message is translated by the receiver. The receiver interprets the message into his own words to derive its meaning. G. Feedback. Feedback is the response by the receiver. Communication is one of the essential elements for the success of an organization. The administration of an organization is not possible without communication. In the words of Chester Bernard, the first executive function is to develop and maintain a system of communication. Manager gets things done through others, thus he spends most of his time in communicating, guiding, instructing and so forth. A publication of the American Management Institution aptly observes, as a manager, your prime responsibility is to get things done through people. However sound your ideas or well-reasoned your decisions, they become effective only as they are transmitted to the others and achieve the desired action or reaction. Communication, therefore, is your most vital management tool. Whatever the management does, they do it by communicating with others. In the words of Coons and O'Donnell, it is no exaggeration to say that communication is the means by which an organization activity is unified. It is the means by which behavior is modified, change is effected, and goals are achieved. Communication is needed everywhere and in all types of organizations. Communication promotes cooperation and helps in building up the high morale in the organization. It also helps in motivating the employees. Effective communication helps the workers or the employees to express their problems and grievances to the management. Thus, they strengthen their relationships through communication. Another important role of communication exists when employees are to be given training, because training programs not only depend on the contents of the training but also on how effectively it is being delivered to the trainee. Apart from this, there are other fields also where communication play a significant role, like better planning, organizing, staffing, decision making, coordination, controlling, and so on. All these requires effective communication. In the words of C.B. Gupta, the importance of communication has been increased due to the growing size of organizations, technological advancements, focus on human relations, and growth of trade unions, stress on public relations and social responsibilities of the business. Communication network is the system through which message is transmitted in one direction or in several directions. It mainly depends on the number of persons involved in the process of communication as well as the type of media or channel of communication being selected. In the words of Singh and Chabra, network determines the speed, smoothness, and accuracy with which the message flow throughout the organization. Following are 4 types of communication network that prevails in organizations. A. Circle network. In this type of communication network, the information or messages are transferred from one person to another in the form of a circle. This means that each person can communicate with 2 other persons who are located on the left and right of his sides. Such network gives greater satisfaction to the person, but at the same time it is time consuming because it is slow in nature. B. Chain network. Under this type of communication network, messages are shared by one person to another in the form of vertical lines along the scalar chain of command. The scalar chain of command means that all the subordinates receive the instructions and orders from one superior. Under this system, messages can flow from the top to the bottom or from the bottom to the top in a vertical line. C. Wheel network. In the wheel network, one person sits in the center of the network and receives and disseminates all the information. Person, generally a manager, sits in the center and acts as a hub of a wheel. All the information passes through the manager and subordinates can communicate with and through him. There is no direct contact between employees or subordinates of an organization. In simple words, there is one central authority and all the subordinates have to report to him. D. Free flow network. As the name itself suggests, under this system, there is no restriction in the flow of information. Everyone is free to communicate with everyone and anyone in the process of communication in an organization. This means that information can flow from any direction. Thus, it is also known as all-channel network. This network is informal and unstructured in nature. Channels of communication are one of the important elements of communication process. It is the way through which messages are shared or transmitted from one person, that is the sender, to another person, that is the receiver. Channels of communication are broadly classified into 2 categories. 1. The formal communication, and 2nd, the informal communication. Now, formal communication flows officially from the top to the bottom and from the bottom to the top. It is a systematic communication which is deliberately planned in the organization. This type of communication is based on formal relationships between the employees of the organization. It is well structured, stable, and a rigid communication process. There are three types of formal communication, that is, downward communication, upward communication, and horizontal communication. Now, downward communication. Downward communication is a vertical type of formal communication under which information flows from the top to the bottom in the organization. This type of communication is generally used when the superior wants to issue orders, instructions, policies, memos, circulars, rules, budgets, and so on to the subordinates. In addition to this, it is a means through which a superior motivates and influences the behavior of his subordinates. Upward communication. Upward communication is also vertical type of formal communication under which information flows from the bottom to the top of the organization. Upward communication is as important as downward communication because it provides feedback on the extent of effectiveness of downward communication. Upward communication is used when employees want to share their complaints, their grievances, suggestions, proposals, etc. with their superiors. Horizontal communication. Horizontal communication is also a formal type of communication under which information flows horizontally, that is, from one person to another who is at the same position and status. This type of communication takes place among people working at the same level through letters, memos, meetings, conferences, and so on. Informal communication is that communication which takes place informally amongst the employees. It is an unofficial, unplanned, and spontaneous channel of communication which takes place amongst the employees of an organization. This type of channels of communication takes place because of interpersonal contacts between the employees. It is technically known as grapevine because it is unstructured in nature and information flows from all directions. It generally operates like a cluster chain as every person tells in turn many other persons. Informal channels of communication operate at a high speed as it functions through word of mouth. There are three methods of communication. They are as follows. A. Oral communication. Oral communication takes place through word of mouth. It means exchange of ideas, views, opinions, etc. among or between the people by face-to-face contact or through mechanical devices like the telephonic conversation, intercom systems, and so on. However, face-to-face contact is considered as the most effective way of transmitting the message because it avoids misunderstanding between the persons and can resolve the problem on the spot. There are various advantages of oral communication, like it is economical, it is flexible, and it helps in giving a quick response. Apart from this, the speed of oral communication is faster than the written communication. But at the same time, it also suffers from certain limitations, like the oral communication does not provide a permanent record. It is a time-consuming process. It is not desirable in cases of long distance. B. Written communication. Written communication is that communication under which information is transmitted through written words in the form of letters, circulars, memos, reports, and so on. In other words, written communication refers to those decisions, policy statements, rules, procedures, orders, and instructions, and so on, which are expressed on papers. There are various advantages of written communication over oral communication. For instance, it provides permanent records for future reference. If the message is lengthy, then written communication is preferable. It is more clear, specific, and economical. Some of the disadvantages of written communication is that it is time-consuming and inflexible. Moreover, it lacks a personal touch and the receiver may not understand the feelings, attitudes, and emotions of the sender. C. Gestural communication. Information passes from the sender to the receiver through body language or gestures are known as gestural communication. In case of oral communication, gestures of the parties are very important. It is used to convey the feelings, emotions, and attitudes. In every organization, whether big or small, barriers to effective communication exist to a greater or lesser extent. Barriers are the obstacles or hindrances which cause distortions, breakdowns, and delay in the communication process. Following are some of the common barriers which exist in organizations and makes the communication process ineffective. A. Organizational barrier. This is the most common barrier of organization, which exists due to long and complex layers of hierarchy. Nowadays, organizations involve too many levels which cause long communication lines. This long communication line may be the cause of delaying the message as well as distorting the message. Sometimes long communication lines may also lead to filtering. When information has to be passed through several persons, it causes unnecessarily filtering of messages. B. Status barrier. Another problem in an effective communication exists when the persons of higher status do not like to talk to the persons at the lower status. At the same time, subordinates at lower status also do not feel free to talk to the superiors. They share only that information which the superior would like to hear. C. Information overload. Too much of information at the same time may lead to confusion. Receivers may ignore or misinterpret some of the messages. D. Channel distortion. Various disturbances due to noise, unhealthy environment, problem in telephone connections, telex machines, and so on may distort the message. E. Inattention. Another obstacle in the way of effective communication occurs when the receiver himself or herself does not pay attention to the sender because of boring lecture or uninteresting information that is being communicated. F. Semantic barrier. There may be the circumstances when the same words have the different meaning to different persons. In such cases, the correct purpose or meaning of communication will not be delivered. Perceptual barrier. Every person has different perceptions. They would like to hear, read, or see which is in their interest and leave the rest of the message. This may create the communication process ineffective. H. Premature evaluation. There are circumstances when the receivers are in such a hurry that he evaluates the message before listening to it carefully and completely. I. Miscellaneous barrier. Apart from the above barriers, there may also be other barriers like the lack of ability to communicate, irrelevant and unclear messages, lack of trust between communicators, and so on. There are various ways through which the above obstacles can be removed. Some of the important ways are as discussed here. A. Clarity of message. First and foremost step of an effective communication is that the message must be clearly understood both by the sender and the receiver. Sender can send the message properly and make the message understandable to the receiver only when he himself is clear about the contents of the message. The language used must be as simple as possible. No ambiguity should creep into it. B. Completeness. Messages must be complete in all respects. Incomplete messages create confusion and misunderstanding. C. Communication skills. Every person, especially a person who is sending the message, should have clear communication skills. D. Organizational structure. The structure of an organization should be flexible and should have shorter channels of communication. This will definitely help in achieving the smooth and effective flow of communication. E. Timeliness. The message should be delivered to the right person and at the right time. Proper channels should be used to deliver the message. F. Attention. It is very necessary that receivers should listen to the message carefully. It is the responsibility of the communicator to make the contents of the message interesting. In simple words, the communicator should try to secure the attention of every person or communicate the same by making the message attractive and interesting. G. Free from semantic barriers. In order to remove semantic barriers, it is very essential that the receiver should understand the message in the same manner with the same meaning in which it has been delivered to him by the sender. H. Miscellaneous guidelines. Apart from the above steps, there are other steps also which help in making the communicating process more effective. For instance, no status barrier should be there between the superior and subordinates. Every person should be free to talk to each other. Receiver should not evaluate the message before getting it completely. Disturbances due to telephone lines, telex machines and other noises should be completely removed before delivering the message. So that is all for today. I hope you have understood the fundamentals of communication. We'll see you again with another topic on management. Till then, do take care and bye-bye.